As a skeptic, I had always dismissed legends and myths, even those that swirled around the ancient town of Eldrich. Tucked away amidst gnarled forests and fog-laden hills, Eldrich was a place seemingly untouched by time, a relic where echoes of the past were almost palpable. I arrived here a weary traveler searching for solitude and a break from the mundane struggles of city life. Little did I know, my life was on the brink of a chilling encounter with darkness as ancient as the cobblestone streets beneath my feet. On a cold, moonless night, I encountered the entity that would forever alter my fate. I found myself wandering aimlessly through the town's narrow, winding pathways, my way lit only by the feeble glow of gas lamps flickering like the fading breaths of spirits. Then I heard a soft, enchanting humming, strangely captivating, drawing me towards a forgotten part of town where the fog thickened and the shadows deepened. I saw her in a small, secluded square framed by dilapidated buildings. She was an enigma draped in a midnight velvet cloak, her pale skin glowing ethereally in the darkness. Her eyes, a deep crimson, caught mine, and it felt as if time itself had halted. "Why do you wander alone at night, stranger?" Her voice, soft yet commanding, broke the silence. Before I could respond, she stepped closer, her presence overwhelming yet strangely comforting. "The night is no place for mortals to roam freely," she continued, her gaze piercing through the shadows. Intrigued and unnerved, I asked, "And what makes the night yours?" Her lips curled into a slight, knowing smile. "Because, dear stranger, this is when creatures like me thrive." That night, under the hauntingly beautiful arch of the stone bridge by the old mill, she told me tales of Eldritch's true nature, a haven for the supernatural, a sanctuary for beings of the night. As the hours passed, her stories filled the air, each tale more curious and chilling than the last. It wasn't until the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon that I realized the danger I was in. "You must go now," she urged, her tone suddenly urgent. "The sun is not kind to my kind." As I turned to leave, her cold hand gripped mine. "Come back tonight, I have much more to share with you." Her words echoed in my mind all day, a siren call I couldn't ignore. True to her word, I returned that night. But this time the stakes were higher. She unveiled her true nature to me through her tales and the chilling embrace of vampirism. The transition was a mix of agony and exhilaration. I felt a surge of power I had never known, a dark gift that bound me eternally to the night. As the transformation took hold, the world around me shifted. Sounds became sharper, scents more potent, and the night no longer a veil of darkness but a vivid tapestry, alive with details unseen to my mortal eyes. The woman, my enigmatic savior and curse, watched me with satisfaction and solemnity. "What is your name?" I finally asked, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Amelia," she replied, her eyes glinting with the starlight's reflection. "And you, my new kin, what were you called before this night?" "John," I said, still grappling with the surreal nature of my new reality. "Well, John," Amelia began, her voice a melody that seemed to dance with the whispering winds. "Your old life is behind you. Tonight you are reborn, not just in flesh, but in spirit and purpose. You are one of us now, a creature of the night bound by its rules and freedoms." The days that followed were a blur of sensations and revelations. Amelia introduced me to the hidden world of Eldritch, a society that thrived in the shadows. I met others like us, each with tales of transformation and existence. Some had embraced their new lives with fervor, others with resignation. Eldritch, I learned, was a sanctuary established centuries ago where our kind could exist, away from the prying eyes and harsh judgments of the outside world. However, only some were as peaceful as it seemed. An undercurrent of tension ran through the nocturnal community. An ancient pact that had kept us safe from the world was fraying, threatened by internal strife and external pressures. "There are those who seek to break the balance," Amelia confided in me one evening as we watched the moon ascend from the rooftop of an old ivy-clad manor. "Our existence, while veiled, is not unchallenged. There are hunters, John, and they are growing bolder." As my mentor, Amelia taught me the ways of our kind, the art of the hunt, the delicate balance of our needs, and the laws that governed us. "We are not monsters," she often said, "unless we choose to be." I learned to navigate the night, to draw sustenance from the shadows without leaving a trail of destruction. Yet with every passing night, I felt a growing restlessness, a desire to know more about our origins and my place within this shadowy lineage. My curiosity led me to ancient texts and forbidden lore, each page turning to reveal more about our kind and tumultuous history. From the rise of the first vampires to the secretive covenants that protected us, the knowledge consumed me as much as my new thirst for blood. One night, drawn by a whisper of ancient magic, I ventured into the heart of the forest that bordered Eldritch. Amelia had warned me of its dangers, of the old powers that slumbered beneath the gnarled roots and within the silent boughs. But my hunger for understanding pushed me forward, deeper into the darkness. As I ventured further, the forest seemed to breathe around me, its air thick with ancient magic and whispered secrets. The deeper I went, the more palpable the sense of something old and powerful became. In the heart of this forest, I stumbled upon a hidden grove illuminated by the ethereal light of the full moon. At its center stood an ancient altar covered in runes that pulsed with a ghostly luminescence. Drawn to the altar, I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold stone. Instantly, visions flooded my mind, flashes of a time long forgotten, battles between celestial forces and the rise of the first vampires. I saw the forging of the original pact that had allowed our kind to walk the earth undisturbed by mortal men. The weight of our entire history bore down upon me, filling me with a profound sense of duty and destiny. As I absorbed the ancient wisdom, a new resolve crystallized within me. It was clear that the fragile peace of Eldritch depended not just on secrecy, but on understanding and respecting the ancient forces at play. With this newfound knowledge, I knew I had to protect this legacy, for any disruption could bring about our ruin or our resurgence. As the visions from the ancient altar faded, I stood alone in the grove, the forest silence thick around me. My mind raced with the revelations of our origins and the grave responsibilities that came with them. I was so engrossed in thought that I barely noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The night air grew tense, charged with an imminent threat that prickled the back of my neck. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, snapping me out of my reverie. I turned, my vampire senses heightening in response to the danger. Now adept at seeing through the darkest nights, my eyes scanned the shadows. There, between the gnarled branches, eyes glowed with a feral golden light. Werewolves, the ancient rivals of our kind. Instinctively, I knew they weren't by chance. The sacred grove and its secrets were not just known to the vampires. The werewolves, bound by their own ancient codes, also revered and protected these mystical sites, often clashing with vampires over their guardianship. As the first werewolf stepped into the moonlit clearing, its massive form hulking and muscles rippling under a dark fur coat, another figure emerged from the shadows. Unlike the beast, this one was human, at least in appearance, a hunter, his crossbow aimed not at the werewolf but at me. His presence confirmed the worsening tensions between humans and our kind, hunters increasingly daring to venture into the heart of our secrets. The hunter's eyes met mine, cold and unyielding. "This ends tonight, vampire. The sanctity of this place will not be sullied by your kind any longer." Realizing the gravity of the situation, I prepared myself for the confrontation. The werewolves, recognizing the common threat posed by the hunter, seemed to hesitate. In that moment, I saw an opportunity not just for survival, but for an unlikely alliance. "Listen," I shouted over the rising growl of the werewolves. "The hunter seeks to destroy us all, werewolf and vampire alike. We share a common heritage and duty to protect these ancient grounds. Tonight we must stand together." The leader of the werewolf pack, a giant creature with scars marking its battles, considered my words. With a nod that felt like a grudging respect, it turned its attention to the hunter. The air vibrated with the tension of impending battle. With no time left for words, the grove erupted into chaos. The hunter fired his crossbow, the bolt whizzing past me as I dodged, moving faster than any human could. I closed the distance between us, my new vampire strength fueling my speed and agility. Meanwhile, the werewolves charged, their howls piercing the night as they converged on the hunter from all sides. The battle was fierce and swift. Together, we overwhelmed the hunter who, despite his preparation, could not match the combined force of vampire and werewolf. With the hunter subdued and the immediate threat neutralized, the werewolves and I paused, the adrenaline of the fight slowly ebbing away. The leader of the pack approached me, its eyes no longer filled with hostility but with a cautious respect. "Tonight you have earned the pack's acknowledgement, vampire." The grove remained sacred, protected. As they retreated into the darkness, leaving me to contemplate the night's unexpected alliances, I realized that Eldritch's supernatural community was more interconnected than I had ever imagined. The balance was delicate, and maintaining it would require not just strength and knowledge, but diplomacy and alliances that transcended old prejudices. As dawn approached, the forest settled from the night's sleep. The werewolves, their forms shifting as the first light touched the horizon, disappeared into the undergrowth, their human forms now vulnerable and seeking shelter. I too felt the weight of the sun's rise, an alarm for a retreat to the safety of the shadows. Vampires in Eldritch, myself included, sought refuge in various havens. Old crypts, abandoned mansions, and specially designed chambers that shielded us from the sun's rays. While our bodies lay dormant during these daylight hours, our minds often did not. Many of us entered a state of semi-consciousness, where we could communicate telepathically, plan, and even continue our studies in the safety of our mental sanctuaries. Amelia, who had become my guide and mentor in this new life, had arranged a secure place beneath an old chapel for me. The room was lined with soil from the ancient cemeteries of Eldritch, a tradition believed to strengthen our connection to the land and enhance our powers. Here I spent the daylight hours in contemplation and reflection, often revisiting the ancient texts in my mind, piecing together our history and considering the future of our kind. Meanwhile, the werewolves lived dual lives. They integrated into human society daily, maintaining their disguises as ordinary townsfolk. Some worked in local businesses or tended to the vast expanses of wildland that surrounded Eldritch, roles that allowed them to keep close to nature and guard the boundaries of our hidden world. Their leader, whom I had known as Nolan, ran a local workshop, crafting wood and stone into artifacts, some of which bore the same ancient runes seen in the grove. Their transformation was bound to the lunar cycle, gaining strength as the moon waxed, and often during the days leading up to the full moon, their restlessness would become apparent. Unlike vampires who were consistently strong throughout the lunar cycle, werewolves experienced fluctuations in their powers, making them unpredictable and at times more dangerous. As the community of Eldritch gradually woke to the peculiar balance of power established the previous night, interactions between vampires and werewolves became more frequent. Meetings were held under the cloak of dusk in neutral territories such as the very grove where our alliance had been forged. These gatherings were initially tense, but mutual respect developed over time, rooted in our shared goal of protecting Eldritch and its ancient secrets. During one such meeting, Amelia proposed an initiative to create a council representing both vampires and werewolves to address any threats collectively, be they from human hunters or internal conflicts. It is only through unity that we can ensure the safety of Eldritch and uphold the ancient laws that have allowed us to coexist with the human world, she dated, echoing through the gathered crowd. The proposal was met with mixed reactions, but the recent memory of our combined victory lent weight to her words. Nolan, stepping forward, agreed. The hunter was a reminder of the dangers we face. It's clear we stand stronger together than apart. The council would also serve another purpose, to educate younger members of both communities about their responsibilities and the importance of discretion in maintaining the secrecy of our existence. This initiative gradually helped to integrate the two species more deeply, fostering a sense of community and shared purpose that had been absent for centuries. As the council began to take shape, one of the first orders of business was to address the fallout from the confrontation with the hunter. Although we had subdued him, the question of his fate and the potential for further conflict lingered heavily over our discussions. Amelia, ever strategic, suggested, "We can't simply dispose of him. If he goes missing, more will come looking, possibly in greater numbers and better prepared." Nola, representing the werewolves, nodded in agreement. "We need a sustainable solution, one that prevents immediate retaliation and safeguards our existence in the long term." After much deliberation, it was decided that instead of executing the hunter, we would attempt something far riskier, but potentially more rewarding. Turn him. By transforming the hunter into one of us, we could neutralize him as a threat and potentially gain an ally who understood the hunter's methods and motivations. The task fell to me because of my recent transition and understanding of human life. With the council's councilman, I approached the hunter, who had been securely detained in a location known only to a few within our community. "Your life as you know it is over." I do him, not unkindly, "but a new one can begin where you see the truth about us, not as monsters but as custodians of ancient secrets." The hunter, Marcus, was initially defiant, but his resistance waned as the reality of his situation settled in. Faced with the inevitability of death or a new life, he chose the latter. The transformation was carried out under the watchful eyes of both vampires and werewolves, marking a new precedent in our community. Marcus could have been smoother. The transition was fraught with challenges, both physical and moral. However, his insider knowledge of hunter tactics and networks proved invaluable. He revealed that hunters were becoming more organized, and his disappearance would have undoubtedly triggered a search operation. Under Marcus's guidance, we began fortifying Eldritch, employing ancient magic and modern technology to create barriers and illusions that would make it difficult for outsiders to uncover our sanctuary. Additionally, Marcus helped to train a select group of vampires and werewolves in counter-surveillance and combat techniques specifically designed to combat hunters. Meanwhile, the council worked on establishing protocols for dealing with human intruders, emphasizing capture and negotiation over aggression. This new approach aimed to reduce the likelihood of violent encounters that could expose our community or escalate into more significant conflicts. As time passed, the council's efforts began to yield results. The community grew more robust and more cohesive, and the threat of hunters, while not eliminated, became more manageable. Once a silent witness to centuries of hidden conflict, Eldritch began to feel like a true sanctuary for its supernatural inhabitants. The peace that had begun to settle over Eldritch was soon shattered by a series of sinister disappearances. Members of both the vampire and werewolf communities began to vanish without a trace, leaving behind a palpable sense of dread. Whispered rumors of a dark force at play began to circulate, and the council convened under urgent circumstances to address the crisis. One night, as the full moon cast eerie shadows through the council's meeting place, Marcus, now a seasoned member, voiced a chilling theory. These aren't random disappearances, they're targeted. The victims, he paused, his voice heavy with dread. They all possessed unique abilities. This feels like the work of a warlock. Amelia, her face taut with concern, turned to the group. A warlock, here in Eldritch. Nolan, ever the skeptic, growled lowly. Warlocks are legends, tales to scare pups. How can we be sure? Before more could be debated, a ghostly figure materialized at the edge of the gathering, a specter with a haunting presence, her voice echoing like a wind through barren branches. The warlock exists, she intoned mournfully. His name is Malachi, and he thrives by stealing the life force of supernaturals. I was his first victim, a witch he loved and betrayed for power. The specter, revealing herself as Ilara, had been a powerful witch in life, known for her benevolent magic. In death, her spirit was bound to the earthly realm by the trauma of Malachi's betrayal and her unfinished business. Malachi seeks the power of an ancient vampire known to your kind as Cedric, Ilara continued. Cedric could walk through shadows, appear and disappear at will. If Malachi captures him, the balance will tip irreversibly in his favor. The council listened, horror and resolve mingling in their expressions. Amelia stepped forward, her decision clear. We must act, not just to protect our own but to prevent Malachi from gaining more power. Ilara, will you guide us? Ilara nodded, her spectral form flickering. I will lead you to him, but be warned, he is cunning and cruel. The plan was desperate but necessary. Using Ilara's guidance, they tracked Malachi to a decrepit mansion on the outskirts of Eldritch. The building, cloaked in dark magic, was guarded by ensorcelled creatures and traps. Inside, they found Malachi in the midst of a dark ritual, a captive vampire struggling against chains imbued with ancient runes. It was Cedric, his eyes wide with fury and fear. You're too late, Malachi sneered, his hands glowing with stolen energy. The power will be mine. What ensued was a maelstrom of magic and combat. Amelia and Nolan led the charge, dodging curses and countering with their own powers. Marcus, adept in hunter combat techniques, dismantled the physical defenses while Ilara's ghostly form distracted Malachi, sapping his focus. The battle reached its peak when Malachi, realizing his imminent defeat, turned on his vampire ally, who had been promised daylight freedom. With a cruel twist of magic, he drained the traitor's life force, but not before Cedric, in a burst of preternatural speed, broke free from his chains. Using his teleportation ability, Cedric appeared behind Malachi, his hands clamping down on the warlock's shoulders. Your reign ends now, he hissed, and with a concentrated effort channeled all his accumulated power into a devastating burst that obliterated Malachi. The mansion fell silent, the threat neutralized but at great cost. As they regrouped, Ilara's spirit approached Cedric, her form beginning to fade. Thank you, she whispered, a smile gracing her ethereal features. My soul can finally find peace. With Malachi's demise, the stolen powers he had hoarded began to dissipate. returning to their rightful owners or lost forever to the ether. Eldritch had been saved, but the scars of Malachi's terror would not soon be forgotten. In the days that followed Malachi's demise, Eldritch was cloaked in a somber silence. The community, both vampire and werewolf, mourned the losses and the near cataclysm they had narrowly averted. Yet there was also a palpable sense of relief and cautious optimism. Malachi's reign of terror had ended, and with it, a significant threat to their existence. Amelia, now more than ever, emerged as a central figure in the rebuilding efforts. "We've been given a second chance," she addressed the council, her voice resonant in the stillness of the council chamber. "We must not waste it. Let us use this time to strengthen our bonds, fortify our defenses, and ensure that no single entity can ever threaten our community like this again." Nolan, by her side, nodded in agreement. "The werewolves of Eldritch will stand with our vampire kin. We have seen what can be achieved when we unite against a common foe." Marcus, taking his role seriously as the bridge between the old hunter ways and the supernatural community, proposed the establishment of a training program. "We need to be prepared always. Let's train our young in defense, not just in physical combat, but in the ways of magic and strategy. We cannot be caught off guard again." The council agreed, and soon a comprehensive defense academy was established, drawing on the strengths and knowledge of both vampires and werewolves. Cedric, having been a pivotal figure in the defeat of Malachi, was asked to lead the training on magical defense. Despite his initial reluctance, Cedric accepted, recognizing the necessity of passing on his unique skills, especially those that had saved them during the battle. Meanwhile, Alara's peaceful departure had left a spiritual void in the community. Her presence had been a comforting one, despite the circumstances of her existence. In her honor, and to remember those who had fallen to Malachi, a memorial was erected in the heart of Eldritch, in the very grove where the alliance between vampires and werewolves had first solidified. As weeks turned into months, strange tales began to emerge from the edges of Eldritch. Travelers spoke of a shimmering figure, a woman who guided lost souls through the forest, her light a beacon in the darkest nights. It seemed Alara's spirit continued to watch over Eldritch, her legacy one of protection and benevolence. The community, though forever changed, grew stronger. The Defense Academy became a place of learning and camaraderie, breaking down the age-old barriers between vampire and werewolf. Young recruits, inspired by the tales of Cedric and the bravery of their elders, trained with a fervor that promised a new era for Eldritch. Yet the supernatural world was vast and filled with mysteries yet to be uncovered. As Eldritch found its new rhythm, the council remained vigilant, aware that the peace they now enjoyed could be disrupted by other unseen forces lurking in the shadows of the supernatural realm. The necromancer, known only as Mordecai, had wandered the earth for centuries, amassing knowledge and power from the darkest corners of magic. His ultimate goal was chaos, the destruction of the delicate balance that communities like Eldritch worked tirelessly to maintain. To achieve this, he sought to resurrect Malachi, whose tyranny he intended to harness to spread fear and discord. Mordecai's approach to Eldritch was preceded by omens, strange occurrences such as the ground souring, plants withering overnight, and an unsettling chill that settled over the town. His army of zombie-like minions, resurrected corpses bound to his will, began to appear in the forests surrounding Eldritch, attacking travelers and creeping closer to the town each night. The council, alerted by these events, convened urgently. Marcus, with his deep knowledge of hunter lore, was the first to voice the threat. Necromancy of this level is rare. Mordecai isn't just raising the dead, he's binding them to his will to create an army. We are facing a force unlike any before. Amelia, ever the strategist, proposed a plan. We need to strengthen our defenses, but more importantly, we must prevent Mordecai from reaching Malachi's remains. We have them secured in a cave guarded by a dragon, an old ally who owes us a debt. But Mordecai's power may be enough to overcome even that formidable guardian. Nolan, recalling the alliance forged with the werewolves, nodded in agreement. Our combined forces can hold him off, but we need to know more about him. Any weakness that could turn the tide in our favor. Unknown to most, a secret order had been watching Mordecai's movements for decades. This order, formed eons ago, consisted of immortals from various realms who sought to contain threats like Mordecai. One of their members approached the council under the cover of night, revealing the existence of a secret that could either vanquish Mordecai or elevate his powers to unimaginable levels. The Necronomicon, the envoy whispered, a tome of dark magic that contained spells potent enough to control or destroy beings like Mordecai. But beware, the book's power is double-edged. If Mordecai obtains it, he could become unstoppable. Armed with this knowledge, the council formed a two-pronged strategy. Cedric and a team of the best fighters would fortify the cave, ensuring the Dragon Guardian was supported. Meanwhile, Amelia, Marcus, and a select group from the Secret Order would seek the Necronomicon, hidden in an ancient, forgotten library deep in the mountains. The race against time intensified as Mordecai's minions clashed with Eldrich's defenders. Battles erupted nightly as the undead army tried to breach the town's barriers, each skirmish more desperate than the last. In the mountainous library, amidst dust and shadows, Amelia and her team faced trials of their own. Puzzles and traps guarded the Necronomicon, each challenge rooted in ancient magic and lore. As they neared their goal, the weight of their task pressed heavily upon them. Securing the tome was crucial, not only to defeat Mordecai but to prevent the potential catastrophe of its misuse. Back at the cave, as Mordecai approached, the air thickened with the power of old magic. The dragon roared, a sound that shook the earth as it engaged the necromancer in a terrifying battle. Mordecai, wielding spells of control and destruction, proved a formidable opponent. But the combined might of Cedric's team and the dragon held him at bay, buying Amelia and her team the precious time they needed. The mountain air was thin and cold as Amelia, Marcus, and their companions from the Secret Order ascended the steep, winding path that led to the library's hidden. They navigated through dense fog and treacherous terrain, aware that time was a luxury they could not afford. The sense of urgency was palpable, driving them through exhaustion and peril. Upon reaching the entrance, marked by runes that glowed with a ghostly luminescence, the group paused. With his deep understanding of ancient symbols, Marcus carefully deciphered the runes. These are protective spells cast to preserve the library's sanctity. Any misstep here could trigger defenses we may not be able to withstand, he warned, his voice low. The door to the library was a massive stone slab, etched with more runes and an intricate puzzle that required not only knowledge of ancient languages, but also an understanding of historical events in the supernatural world. The puzzle, a series of rotating discs with symbols representing different epochs and key events, demanded wisdom and insight to align correctly. As Amelia and the team worked on the puzzle, the sounds of distant thunder rolled through the mountains, a stark reminder of the ongoing battle with Mordecai. With each passing moment, the pressure mounted, but finally, after several tense and silent minutes, they heard the deep groan of stone grinding against stone. The door slowly moved, revealing the darkened expanse of the library. Inside, the library was vast, its shelves towering high and filled with tomes of forgotten lore. Cobwebs draped over giant bookcases, and the air was thick with the musty scent of ancient parchment and magic. This place was a labyrinth, and somewhere within lay the Necronomicon. The search could have been more straightforward. The library seemed almost alive, its layout shifting subtly as they moved deeper into its heart. Marcus speculated that this was another layer of defense, a magical maze designed to confuse and trap intruders. As they navigated through the shifting aisles, sudden dangers emerged. Animated suits of armor imbued with elemental powers attacked the group, forcing them to defend themselves while trying not to lose their way. Using her vampire agility and enhanced senses, Amelia led her companions through each assault, her determination unyielding. Finally, they reached the central chamber, a vast domed room where the Necronomicon was said to rest. However, guarding the tome was the final and most formidable obstacle. A spectral guardian formed from the spirits of all the librarians who had overseen the library through the centuries. The guardian, a swirling vortex of faces and whispered voices, challenged them with riddles of logic and ethics. Each riddle posed by the guardian was more complex than the last, testing their knowledge, wisdom, and morality. It became clear that the guardian was protecting the Necronomicon from being taken and ensuring that it would be used wisely and justly. With great effort and after much debate, they solved the riddles. The spectral guardian faded away, leaving behind a pedestal upon which the Necronomicon lay, an ancient, unassuming book bound in shadowy leather with runes etched into its cover. Amelia reached out and took the book, feeling its immense power thrumming through her veins. The weight of their mission, the potential for salvation and destruction, rested heavily in her hands. The air around the cave was thick with the smell of brimstone and magic as Mordecai unleashed spell after spell against the dragon. The dragon, a creature of ancient power and wisdom countered with fiery breath and sweeping powerful tail strikes. Cedric and his team, composed of vampires and werewolves, fought valiantly against the horde of undead minions Mordecai summoned from the earth. Realizing the dragon was a formidable opponent, Mordecai began to focus his darker powers, chanting in a tongue that was old when the mountains were young. The ground trembled, and dead warriors from forgotten battles began to rise, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Cedric, recognizing the escalation in Mordecai's tactics, shouted orders over the din of battle, directing the werewolves to engage the newly risen undead while he and the other vampires focused on supporting the dragon. Using their supernatural speed and agility, they darted in and out of the fray, disrupting Mordecai's concentration and forcing him to divide his focus. Amidst the chaos, a sudden piercing howl cut through the noise, a werewolf, gravely injured by one of the undead, signaling the direness of their situation. This sound galvanized the team, reminding them of what was at stake if they failed to hold the line until Amelia's return. The dragon, sensing the urgency, gathered its strength for a final, desperate maneuver. With a mighty roar, it took to the sky, its wings beating with the force of a tempest, then dove directly at Mordecai. The necromancer, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack, scrambled to raise a protective shield, but the dragon's fiery breath was overwhelming, scorching the ground around him and shattering the shield. Just as the dragon was about to clamp its massive jaws around Mordecai, the necromancer used a burst of dark energy to push himself out of harm's way, his robe smoldering. He staggered, weakened but not defeated, and glared at Cedric and his allies with renewed hatred. "This is not over," he hissed, his voice a blend of fury and desperation. "The night will yet yield to my will." But before Mordecai could regroup for another assault, the wind shifted, carrying a faint yet distinct sound, the distant howl of a werewolf different from before. This was not a cry of pain, but a signal. Moments later, Amelia emerged from the tree line, her expression one of steely determination, the Necronomicon clasped tightly in her hands. Seeing Amelia and sensing the power she carried, Mordecai's eyes widened with a mix of fear and greed. He knew what the book represented, and the possibility of possessing it rekindled his resolve. "Give me the book, vampire," he demanded, his voice echoing with dark power, "and I may yet spare your pitiful lives." Amelia, standing firm beside the dragon, which now hovered protectively behind her, met Mordecai's gaze unflinchingly. "This book," she declared, holding up the Necronomicon, "will be your undoing, Mordecai. We know your weakness, and we are prepared to use it against you." As the tension between them stretched taut, the air buzzing with the imminent clash of power, Amelia readied herself to use the Necronomicon. The final confrontation, fueled by ancient magic and the fierce will to protect Eldrich, was about to begin. With a maniacal glint in his eyes, Mordecai began to chant in an ancient, forbidden dialect, his voice rising over the clamor of battle. The earth around him darkened, absorbing the moon's faint light as if the night was being pulled into his foul spell. "Behold the depths of necromancy," Mordecai proclaimed, his arms spread wide as the ground trembled beneath him. From the soil at his feet, a fissure erupted, spewing forth a cloud of acrid smoke and a figure that began to coalesce into a form both terrifying and awe-inspiring. A demon of old, bound in chains of dark energy. The demon, its eyes burning like coals, roared in fury and defiance, its voice a cacophony that shook the leaves from the trees. It towered over the battlefield, wings unfurling with the sound of thunder, a being of nightmare summoned to turn the tide of battle. Amelia, her resolve unshaken, stepped forward, the Necronomicon open in her hands. "You dare to bring forth such abominations, Mordecai," she called out, her voice ringing clear. "You will not prevail. This creature is not just a tool. It is a being with its own will and will not be so easily controlled." Mordecai sneered, confident in his mastery over the dark arts. "This demon will obey me, as will all creatures of the night. With its power I shall crush you and then Eldritch itself." The demon, its eyes shifting from Mordecai to the gathered defenders of Eldritch, seemed to weigh its options. In that moment of hesitation, the air vibrated with potential energy, the outcome balancing precariously on a knife's edge. Seizing the moment, Cedric whispered to Amelia, "Use the book. You can turn the demon against him. The Necronomicon contains spells of binding and banishment. It's our only chance." Amelia nodded, quickly flipping through the ancient pages until she found the spell she needed. As she began to recite the incantation, the words of power thrumming with energy, the demon's gaze fixed on her, its expression one of curious recognition. The spell wove a complex web of light and shadow around the demon, binding it not to Mordecai but to the will of the Necronomicon itself. The demon struggled, roaring in a mix of rage and pain. But as Amelia continued, the chains of dark energy that Mordecai had used began to break, replaced by bands of shimmering light. Mordecai, realizing too late what was happening, tried to counter the spell, but the demon, now partially freed from his control, turned on him with a fury born of ages of captivity. With a swift, decisive motion, it swept Mordecai off his feet, sending him crashing against the rocky walls of the cave. As the necromancer lay defeated, the demon, still bound by the Necronomicon's power, turned to Amelia. "You have bound me, mortal." It spoke, its voice a rumble like distant thunder. "What is your will?" Holding the Necronomicon close, Amelia responded firmly. "You are to leave this place and return to the depths from whence you came. Harm no one else, and your freedom shall be preserved." Acknowledging her command, the demon nodded slowly. Its form began to dissipate into smoke and shadows, retreating back into the fissure in the earth, the ground sealed behind it as if it had never been. With Mordecai defeated and the demon banished, Eldritch's defenders breathed a sigh of relief. The battle was over, but its scars would remind them of the dangers lurking in the pursuit of power. As the sun rose over Eldritch, casting light on the battered but still standing structures and the forest that had borne witness to the night's terrors, the council convened to assess the damage and chart a course for recovery. Amelia, holding the Necronomicon securely under her arm, addressed the gathering. "Last night we faced one of our community's darkest threats. Mordecai's ambition nearly brought us to ruin, but we stood together, and we prevailed. We must use this experience as a lesson in vigilance and preparedness." Nolan, his fur still singed from the battle, added, "The werewolves of Eldritch owe much to the bravery of our vampire allies. Let this alliance grow stronger in the light of our shared victory. We will fortify our borders, not just against necromancers or demons, but against all who threaten our peace." Marcus, who had once been a hunter of their kind, now stood as their staunchest defender. "We've seen what happens when dark magic is left unchecked. I propose establishing a watch group trained in combat and magical defenses to monitor unusual activities. The Necronomicon should be kept under guard and used only as a last resort." The council agreed, and plans were made to implement these changes. Cedric, who had played a pivotal role in subduing the demon, was tasked with training this new elite guard. "We have powerful allies and resources," Cedric noted. "Let's ensure we're never caught unprepared again." As the community worked to heal and strengthen its defenses, the story of their battle spread beyond Eldritch. Other supernatural communities, previously hidden and isolated, reached out, expressing a desire to share knowledge and resources. A network began to form, a coalition of the hidden and the haunted, dedicated to safeguarding their way of life against external threats. Amelia was particularly interested in expanding this network, seeing it as a way to prevent future calamities. "Unity and diversity," she often said, "is our best defense against the darkness." The library where the Necronomicon was found became a center of learning and exchange. Under heavy protection, it opened its doors to coalition members, offering access to its vast collection of arcane knowledge under strict supervision. The Spectral Guardian, once a fierce protector of its secrets, now served as a guide and teacher to those seeking understanding. Meanwhile, Eldritch itself became a symbol of resilience and cooperation. The annual remembrance of the battle, marked by a festival of lights, drew beings from across the supernatural spectrum. They came to celebrate their survival and renew their commitment to each other, sharing tales of magic and mystery under the watchful eyes of the moon and stars. In time, the wounds of the past began to heal, and the memories of Mordecai and the demon faded into the annals of Eldritch's history. But the lessons they learned, the bonds they formed, and the defenses they built remained a testament to their strength and unity. The Circle of the Eclipse was led by a mysterious figure known only as Morgana. Her mastery over shadow magic was unrivaled, and her ambition was as dark as the spells she wove. Under her direction, the Coven gathered in their secluded stronghold, deep in the heart of an ancient enchanted forest, alive with dark energy. Morgana convened a meeting with her inner circle, each member a master of their forbidden craft. "The Necronomicon holds the keys to realms that have been closed to us for too long," Morgana declared, her voice echoing ominously through the chamber. "With it, we can summon and control forces that will make us unstoppable." Her plan was meticulous and daring. It involved not just brute force but the manipulation of the very fabric of magic that protected Eldritch. "We will divide and conquer," she instructed. "Alden, you will use your illusion magic to mislead their defenders. Seraphine, you must breach their spiritual defenses with your necrotic energy. And I will lead the assault on the library itself." The Coven spent weeks preparing, crafting spells and gathering necessary artifacts. Alden, a warlock able to warp perception, created phantom armies to draw Eldritch's forces away from the library. Seraphine, a witch whose powers derived from death, prepared curses to weaken the spiritual barriers protecting the Necronomicon. As the night of the assault approached, Amelia and Eldritch's defenders were unaware of the looming threat. With his hunter instincts, Marcus had caught wind of the increased activity through his network of informants. "We have incoming," he warned during one of the council meetings. "The Circle of the Eclipse isn't just a myth. They're real and they're coming for the book." The council, seasoned by their previous battles, prepared for the Coven's assault. Cedric enhanced the magical wards around the library, incorporating ancient runes that could repel dark magic. Nolan organized the physical defenses, ensuring that any attempt to breach the perimeter would meet with formidable resistance. On the night the Circle made their move, Eldritch was shrouded in a thick fog conjured by Alden to mask their approach. Phantom sounds and images of an invading force appeared on the outskirts, causing confusion among the defenders. However, Amelia, anticipating such trickery, had stationed scouts with the ability to discern illusion from reality. As the Coven's forces converged on the library, they found Eldritch prepared. Seraphine's curses fell on shields of purified light, her dark energy dissipating upon contact. Morgana, leading the direct assault, found herself face to face with Amelia and Cedric, who were ready with the Necronomicon, not just as a source of power but as a bait to trap her. The battle that ensued was fierce and fraught with powerful magics clashing. Eldritch's defenders used every ounce of their training and resources to counter the sophisticated spells of the Coven. Amelia and Cedric stood resolute at the forefront of the library's entrance. The Necronomicon opened between them, its pages shimmering with ancient runes. They chanted in unison, their voices blending with the book's incantations, creating a barrier of radiant light around the building. Seeing her initial spells falter against their defenses, Morgana grew increasingly furious. "Enough of this!" Morgana roared, her hands glowing with a black aura. She raised her arms, summoning a massive wave of shadow energy. Aiming it directly at the heart of Eldritch's defenses, the wave surged forward, unstoppable as a tidal wave, crashing against the barrier with a thunderous collision. It seemed the barrier would hold for a moment, but then it began to fracture, spiderweb cracks spreading across its luminescent surface. Amelia and Cedric poured more energy into the defense, but they were visibly weakening, their faces etched with exhaustion and strain. Just as the barrier shattered, a sudden, unexpected ally emerged. From the depths of the forest, a brilliant light burst forth, followed by a myriad of tiny figures, elves and fairies, the ancient guardians of the mountain forest. They had been silent watchers of those who dwelt near their domain, rarely interfering. But the scale of the threat posed by Morgana's actions had driven them to act. The elves, with their deep magic connected to the natural world, and the fairies, with their nimble, quick spells, quickly surrounded Morgana's forces. Their sudden appearance sowed confusion among the witches and warlocks, who had not anticipated resistance from such ethereal beings. The leader of the elves, a tall figure with glowing green eyes, stepped forward, his voice resonant and commanding. "This greed, this recklessness with the powers of the dark, ends now," he declared, raising his hands to the sky. Vines burst from the ground, entwining Morgana's minions, pulling them away from the library and trapping them in a grip as firm as steel. The fairies, fluttering high above, wove together light streams, repairing the barrier around the library with swift, precise movements. Their magic, light and quick, countered the heavy, oppressive darkness of Morgana's spells, stitching the fractures in the barrier back together until it was whole again. Realizing that her forces were overpowered and her plans unraveling, Morgana glanced around in fury and desperation. She made one last attempt to reach the Necronomicon, a final surge of dark energy thrusting towards the book. But before her spell could touch it, Amelia, strengthened by the support of the elves and fairies, redirected the energy back at Morgana, encapsulating her in a bubble of her own dark magic. The battle waned as Morgana, trapped and defeated and her coven subdued, was left to the mercy of Eldritch and its newfound allies. The fairies and elves, having ensured the safety of the Necronomicon, did not linger for thanks. They simply nodded to Amelia and Cedric and then disappeared back into the forest, their figures fading into the night as swiftly as they had appeared. Eldritch had survived another night, and this time it was thanks to the unanticipated guardianship of the mountain forest. The Necronomicon was secured once more, and the town, weary and worn from the battle, breathed a sigh of relief, their faith in their defenses and in each other renewed and strengthened. In the days following the battle, Amelia, accompanied by Cedric and a few other council members, ventured into the mountain forest to seek the elves and fairies. They aimed to express gratitude and discuss the potential for a mutual defense pact to benefit all parties involved. The forest, alive with the sounds of nature and the subtle magic of its inhabitants, welcomed them with a serene tranquility that contrasted sharply with the recent chaos. They were led through the woods by a trail of shimmering lights, likely the work of the fairies, to a clearing where the elf leader awaited. The elf leader, who introduced himself as Thalion, greeted them with a courteous nod. "The other night's events have shown us that the disturbances in your lands can ripple through ours. It is prudent for us to discuss how we might aid one another," he said, echoing the wisdom of centuries. Amelia responded, "We are grateful for your help and would be honored to stand with you to protect our shared home. What happened reminded us of the threats we all face, and together we can be better prepared." The discussion that followed focused on the terms of the alliance. Thalion proposed a council of representatives from Eldritch and the forest, meeting regularly to discuss security and environmental impacts. The fairies, represented by a sprightly figure named Lyriel, suggested joint training exercises that would allow them to better understand each other's magical and physical defense strategies. Cedric added his thoughts on integrating some of their arcane knowledge. "Perhaps we could also share our libraries, allowing access to selected texts that might help us understand and respect each other's customs and spells." The proposals were met with nods of agreement. A pact was drafted detailing each side's cooperative measures, including regular patrols, shared intelligence on potential threats, and a commitment to come to one another's aid should the need arise. The alliance also opened up opportunities for the people of Eldritch to learn more about their new allies' rich culture and history. Exchange programs were set up, allowing young elves and fairies to visit Eldritch and vice versa, fostering a deeper understanding and friendship among them. This bond proved beneficial in terms of security and enriching the cultural and magical practices of all involved. Eldritch's annual festival, once a solemn remembrance of battles past, transformed into a vibrant celebration of unity featuring displays of magic and craftsmanship from humans and their elven and fairy allies. The elves and fairies, once elusive, became regular sights in Eldritch, often seen working alongside the town's defenders or sharing their knowledge with the town's scholars and mages. The forest around Eldritch thrived, its magic bolstered by the renewed guardianship, becoming a lush barrier against dark forces. As the night draped its silent cloak over Eldritch, John and Amelia found themselves seated in the quiet confines of an ancient library within the town. It was a place that felt suspended in time, surrounded by towering shelves filled with arcane tomes. The soft glow of candles flickered gently, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Amidst this serene backdrop, John's voice broke the silence, carrying a weight of curiosity and unresolved emotions. "Amelia, I've always wondered why you chose to turn me that night," John began, his voice tinged with gratitude and bewilderment. "You've always held yourself to such high moral standards, refusing to turn someone unless absolutely necessary. What made you decide to bring me into this eternal night?" Amelia looked at John, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight, revealing depths of wisdom and centuries of experience. She sighed softly, knowing this conversation was inevitable and necessary. "John, that night when I first saw you wandering through the town, lost in your own sorrow, you reminded me of someone very dear to me, my younger brother Eirian," Amelia began, her voice soft yet clear. "Eirian was like you in many ways. He too had experienced great losses in his life, and like you, he carried an aura of palpable solitude." She paused, collecting her thoughts, her gaze drifting into the distance as she summoned memories long buried. "I possess a rare ability as a vampire, a gift and a curse. I can look into the souls of others and see their fears, desires, and the essence of who they truly are. When I looked into your soul, John, I saw a profound loneliness, a longing to belong somewhere, to someone." John listened intently, his heart heavy with the memories of his own past. He had been alone for so long. The night of the attack that took his family, the endless days in foster care, and the tumultuous journey through life had left him isolated, adrift in a world that seemed to have no place for him. Amelia continued, her voice now barely above a whisper. I turned you because I believed that you would find not just companionship, but also a purpose in our world. Though cursed by some views, our kind is also blessed with a community, a family bound by our shared fate. I saw in you a spirit that could endure this eternal life, and I hoped that together we could navigate its challenges. John felt mixed emotions swirling within him, surprise, understanding, and a budding sense of acceptance. He had always appreciated Amelia's presence in his life, but knowing the depth of her insight into his soul and her reasons for turning him added a new layer to their bond. Thank you, Amelia, John said sincerely, his eyes meeting hers with a new understanding. I've often felt out of place in this world, but I've found a sense of home with you and the others. Perhaps that's all any of us can ask for. Amelia smiled, a genuine warmth lighting up her ageless face. Yes, John, perhaps that is the greatest thing we can find. And together I believe we can make this long voyage one of meaning and shared moments. As the night wore on, they continued to talk, sharing stories of their pasts and hopes for the future, deepening their connection. Like many others in Eldritch, this night was filled with revelations and quiet companionship, strengthening the bonds of their unlikely family. As Eldritch thrived under the new alliances formed between vampires, elves, fairies, and other supernatural beings, the community began to confront the complexities of these partnerships. The revelation of Eirian's birth, the offspring of a vampire Corvin and a fairy Lysandra, tested the boundaries of their newfound unity. In the mystical town of Eldrich, where the veils between worlds are thin and the supernatural is part of everyday life, a forbidden love blossomed between a vampire named Corvin and a fairy named Lysandra. Their story, one of deep affection and daring defiance, would eventually challenge the very foundations of their societies. Corvin, a vampire of considerable charm and wisdom, had long been fascinated by the ethereal beauty and magic of the fairies who fluttered in the outskirts of Eldritch. He would often linger in the twilight shadows of the enchanted forest, a place where the fairies danced and the air shimmered with their magic. Lysandra, a fairy known for her curious nature and radiant aura, first encountered Corvin during a rare celestial alignment, when the magical energies were particularly potent. Drawn to the shadow where Corvin watched, enchanted by his mysterious aura, Lysandra approached him, her usual caution swept away by intrigue and the thrill of the unknown. Their meeting sparked conversations that lasted through the night, blending tales of vampire lore with fairy tales, each learning from the other. Over time, these meetings grew into a secret bond, with Corvin and Lysandra finding in each other a kinship that transcended their natural enmity and the laws that forbade such unions. As their love deepened, so did the risks. Elves, guardians of the fairies and strict enforcers of ancient laws, would never approve of such a relationship, and the vampires would view it with equal disdain, considering it a distraction from their own somber existence. Despite this, Corvin and Lysandra continued their meetings, their love growing stronger with each passing night. It was during one such meeting, under the glow of a blood moon, an event celebrated by vampires for its potent magical influence, that Lysandra whispered to Corvin the news that would change their lives forever. She was with child, a being conceived of both vampire and fairy essence. The revelation brought both joy and fear, joy for the new life they created out of love, and fear for the future that awaited them. The pregnancy was fraught with challenges, not least of which was keeping it hidden from both their communities. Lysandra, with the help of Corvin and a few trusted allies, retreated into the depths of the enchanted forest where the magic was strongest, providing them cover and protection. Eirian was born in a secluded glen, bathed in the light of the stars and soothed by the whispers of the ancient trees. His wings, delicate and luminescent like his mother's, fluttered gently even as a newborn, and his eyes held the deep crimson hue of his father's vampiric lineage. He was a blend of both worlds, a Velf, embodying the strengths and mysteries of his parents. Eirian's existence came to light under dramatic circumstances, during a communal gathering where beings of all kinds came together to celebrate the solstice. The fairy mother named Lysandra appeared with her child cradled in her arms. The child's delicate, translucent wings shimmered in the moonlight, drawing gasps of awe and murmurs of disapproval from the gathered crowd. The council faced a profound dilemma. The elves, bound by ancient traditions, were particularly vocal, with some elders demanding severe measures. "This child represents a breach of our laws," argued an elder elf, his voice trembling with indignation. "Such unions were forbidden for a reason. They blur lines that should not be crossed, risking the balance we fought so hard to maintain." However, others saw Eirian as a symbol of the new alliances forming within Eldritch. "This child could represent a new era for all of us," countered Amelia, always the voice of reason and empathy. "Perhaps it's time we reconsider what we know about ourselves and each other. Eirian could be the bridge between our worlds, a sign that our old fears need not define our future." The debates grew heated, reflecting deeper tensions about identity and change within the supernatural communities. Some feared what Eirian represented: unknown powers, unforeseen consequences, potential threats. Others embraced the possibility of integration and evolution, seeing Eirian as proof that their world was capable of change and perhaps needed it. As the discussions continued, Corvin and Lysandra lived under the protection of those who supported them, including powerful figures like Amelia and Cedric. They argued for understanding and acceptance, highlighting the need for progression in their societies. Despite the controversies, Eirian grew under the careful guidance of his parents and their allies. He displayed an unusual blend of abilities: his mother's magical affinity with nature, and his father's enhanced strength and senses. His dietary needs were unique, a combination of his fairy heritage's light sustenance and the vampire's darker nourishments. As he matured, Eirian became a symbol of unity for some and a reminder of unsettling change for others. His presence at community events was both a point of fascination and a test of the community's commitment to their new, inclusive ideals. Eirian's story became a tale of hope and unity in Eldritch, even as it challenged the norms and beliefs of many. His presence encouraged others to question long-standing biases and opened discussions on the potential for integration and acceptance in a world that was rapidly changing. Corvin and Lysandra, once pariahs for their forbidden love, were now seen as pioneers, their child a bridge between disparate worlds, heralding a future where the boundaries between species might one day fade away. As Eldritch continued to evolve, so too did its acceptance of Eirian. The child who once embodied conflict became a beacon of hope, a living testament to the possibilities of unity rather than division. His story, woven into the fabric of Eldritch's history, reminded him that even the most entrenched barriers could be overcome with empathy and courage. This tale of love, defiance, and transformation became a cornerstone of Eldritch's legacy, inspiring future generations to dream of a world not bound by the past, but enlightened by the shared brightness of a diverse future. As news of Eirian's existence spread beyond the borders of Eldritch, it ignited a spectrum of reactions across the supernatural world. The story of the first known vampire and fairy heritage hybrid traveled swiftly, fanning the flames of fear, suspicion, and intrigue among distant communities and secret societies. Among these groups was an ancient order, the custodians of balance, who had once defended the supernatural equilibrium against threats. Initially allies in Eldritch's battles and advocates for peace, they now perceived Eirian as a potential catalyst for chaos, fearing the unknown implications of his mixed heritage. The custodians argued that Eirian's existence might inspire other forbidden unions, leading to new, unpredictable hybrids that could disrupt their world's natural order and powers. This fear was compounded by prophecies in their archives, which foretold that a child of two worlds could either bring about an era of unprecedented unity or lead to a cataclysm that would unravel the threads of magical law. Determined to prevent the latter, the custodians decided to act. They dispatched envoys to Eldritch, initially offering a peaceful resolution. Eirian was to be handed over to their custody for study and, if necessary, containment. Eldritch, proud of its progressive stance and protective of its own, refused, asserting Eirian's right to live freely among his community. The refusal sparked a conflict that no one in Eldritch had anticipated. Feeling justified by their doctrine, the custodians launched a covert assault on Eldritch. Under the cover of night, skilled warriors and mages infiltrated the town, aiming to capture Eirian. The town rallied to Eirian's defense, led by Amelia, Corvin, and Lysandra. The battle was fierce, with Eldritch's defenders using a combination of magic and strategy to protect the young hybrid. Cedric, the vampire warrior, organized a perimeter defense around the town, while Amelia and Lysandra focused on safeguarding Eirian. The skirmishes illuminated the night with flashes of magic and the clash of ancient weapons. Eirian, no longer just a bystander, discovered within himself a powerful blend of his inherited abilities. His fairy magic allowed him to manipulate natural forces, while his vampire heritage granted him strength and resilience. He helped repel the attackers with his parents, proving his ability to control his powers responsibly. The conflict, while brief, left deep scars on both sides. The custodians, faced with Eldrich's unexpected strength and unity, were forced to reconsider their approach. Negotiations ensued, mediated by other supernatural factions who feared the escalation of violence. A tenuous agreement was reached. The custodians would cease their pursuit of Eirian in exchange for a promise from Eldrich to monitor his development closely and report any signs of instability or threat. Eirian, for his part, agreed to spend time with the custodians, teaching them about his unique nature and demonstrating that he posed no threat to the balance they sought to protect. This agreement marked a new chapter for Eirian and Eldrich. While the threat of abduction had receded, it had also opened new dialogues about the nature of supernatural beings and their rights. Eirian became an ambassador of sorts, a role that he grew into with the support of his family and community. Once a secluded haven, Eldrich was now at the forefront of a movement advocating for the rights and recognition of hybrids and other unique beings within the supernatural world. The town's resilience and unity had turned it into a beacon of hope for others, symbolizing the possibility of coexistence and mutual respect in a world often divided by fear and misunderstanding. This chapter in Eldrich's history solidified its community and redefined what it meant to be a supernatural being in an ever-evolving world. In the mystical enclave of Eldrich, the birth of Mira, a second wamp, born of a werewolf mother and vampire father, added a complex new layer to the already intricate tapestry of the supernatural community. Mira, blending the ferocious strength of werewolves with the dark resilience of vampires, was unique in her abilities and significance to an ancient prophecy. The existence of Mira resonated with a dire prophecy known to the Lycans, particularly feared by Ragnar, the alpha of the ancient Lycans. The prophecy foretold the rise of a female wamp who possessed the power to overthrow the strongest of alphas. Ragnar had ruled unchallenged for centuries, his strength and strategic acumen undisputed among his kind. The emergence of Mira, as prophesied, threatened to unseat him from centuries of dominance. Mira's parents, aware of the latent threat their daughter posed simply by existing, kept her hidden within the deeper recesses of Eldritch. They hoped to shield her from the prying eyes and political machinations of those who might seek to harm her or use her for their own ends. However, as Mira grew, so did her powers, and her parents found it increasingly difficult to conceal her true nature. Mira's existence came to the forefront during a skirmish at the borders of Eldritch. Acting instinctively, she intervened to help defend a group of Eldritch's denizens, showcasing her formidable abilities. One of Ragnar's scouts witnessed this incident and reported back to the Alpha, confirming his worst fears. Driven by the prophecy and his fear of losing power, Ragnar saw Mira as a direct threat to his reign. He plotted to capture or eliminate her, believing that he could avert the prophecy's fulfillment by doing so. His actions, however, were not without consequence. Within his pack and the broader community, doubts about his leadership began to surface, as many saw his obsession with Mira as a descent into paranoia. Recognizing the brewing storm, Amelia convened a council of Eldritch's supernatural leaders to address the impending crisis. The council aimed to find a peaceful resolution and to safeguard Mira from Ragnar's intentions. Mira, showing a maturity beyond her years, chose to speak at the council. She expressed her desire for peace and her commitment to use her powers for the betterment of all, not to dominate or seek vengeance. Her earnest plea and demonstration of control over her abilities won over many at the council, including some of Ragnar's supporters. The council concluded with a precarious agreement. Ragnar, pressured by his peers and swayed by Mira's words, agreed to hold off on aggressive actions. Instead, he would observe Mira's development, allowing her to train and grow under the community's watchful eye. Mira was given mentors, including Eirian, to help guide her and harness her unique abilities for positive ends. This resolution marked another significant moment for Eldritch, underscoring its evolving role as a sanctuary where understanding and dialogue could bridge even the deepest divides. Like Eirian before her, Mira became a symbol of hope and the potential for coexistence among the varied beings of the supernatural world. As Eldritch continued to navigate the delicate balances of its diverse community, a new figure emerged, casting a fresh veil of intrigue over the town. Known only as the Chronicler, this enigmatic individual appeared without warning of history, his origins, or his mysterious species. Claiming a desire to document Eldritch's history and evolution, from its earliest days to the current era of supernatural integration, he sparked a mixture of curiosity and suspicion among the town's residents. Under the silver gleam of a waxing moon one crisp evening, the Chronicler first appeared at the town's council meeting. Dressed in a cloak that shimmered with a subtle luminescence, he politely requested permission to record the ongoing saga of Eldritch. His voice was calm, imbued with a strange accent that none could place, and his eyes, a deep violet, seemed to hold centuries of untold stories. "I come as an observer," the Chronicler explained, his hands open and empty to show his peaceful intentions. "I wish to compile the Chronicles of Eldritch, detailing its rise as a sanctuary for the supernatural, its challenges, and the futures it might yet embrace. Such a record could serve as a beacon for other communities, a testament to the trials and triumphs of coexistence." The leaders of Eldritch, led by Amelia and Cedric, convened privately to discuss the Chronicler's request. The prospect of having their history documented was appealing, particularly as a means to guide other supernatural communities. However, concerns were raised about the security and privacy of their people, especially given the unique powers and vulnerabilities within their community. "His sudden appearance is unsettling," Cedric noted, his expression tight with caution. "We know nothing of his past nor how he came to learn so much about us already." Amelia, ever the diplomat, suggested a compromise. "Let us allow him to stay under supervision. At first he will have limited access, only observing public events and meetings. Over time, if he proves his honor, we may grant him deeper insights." Agreeing to these terms, the Chronicler began his work by attending gatherings and speaking with various community members willing to share their stories. His presence became familiar, his quill and parchment ever present as he meticulously noted events and anecdotes. However, as days turned into weeks, some in Eldritch observed that the Chronicler seemed particularly interested in the more secretive aspects of their powers and political dynamics. His questions often probed deeper than some felt comfortable, sparking a renewed wave of suspicion about his true intentions. Concerned by these developments, a group of Eldritch's residents, including Eirian and Mira, decided to discreetly investigate the Chronicler. Their efforts revealed a hidden cache of documents in his quarters, copies of the very histories he had been recording, but with additional notes on the vulnerabilities and strengths of key community members. Confronted with this discovery, the Chronicler confessed that his mission was dual. While his primary goal was indeed to record the Chronicles of Eldritch, a distant council of immortals had also tasked him with assessing the town's potential as a power broker in the supernatural world. Faced with this revelation, the leaders of Eldritch had to decide how to handle the Chronicler. After much deliberation, they chose to allow him to stay, recognizing the value of his work, but under the condition that he would no longer seek or record information regarding individuals' personal strengths and vulnerabilities without explicit consent. Furthermore, his findings would be shared with the council regularly to ensure transparency. The Chronicler agreed to these terms, and over time he earned the tentative trust of many in Eldritch. His chronicles, rich with the town's history and collective wisdom, eventually served as a vital resource not only for Eldritch, but also for other supernatural communities seeking guidance in their own journeys toward integration and peace. This episode with the Chronicler underscored the complexities of trust and transparency within a community rich in diversity and power, reinforcing Eldritch's commitment to vigilance and unity as it navigated the ever-changing landscape of the supernatural world. If you are intrigued by the tales and unfolding events within the mystical community of Eldritch as chronicled by the Chronicler, or if you wish to embark on new adventures alongside its diverse inhabitants, we invite you to share your thoughts and interests. Please leave a comment expressing your curiosity or any particular aspects of Eldritch's rich history and supernatural dynamics you'd like to explore further. Your feedback is invaluable as we continue to weave the intricate tapestry of Eldritch's legacy and its many enigmatic characters. Whether it's delving deeper into the Chronicler's secrets or following Eirian and Mira's journeys, let us know what captivates you the most about this enchanted world. If you find this story captivating, we invite you to subscribe and support our content. Your subscription helps us create more enchanting content for you to enjoy. We would be grateful for your support. Thank you for watching.